Okay, so let's dive into a really big question, one that feels more and more relevant every single day. In a world that's just getting louder, faster, and more chaotic, where does something as quiet and slow as a story even fit in anymore? And this really starts with an idea from the novelist Haruki Murakami. We're living in this age of constant acceleration, right? You know the feeling. News just replaces itself before we can even begin to understand it. Images are screaming for our attention until the words themselves start to feel, well, a little weightless, meaning the very idea of it is struggling just to keep up. And that feeling, that sense of unreliability, it sets the stage perfectly for our first big area of discussion. It really frames the crisis that literature finds itself in right now. So this is the core of it, isn't it? When reality feels stranger than fiction, what's the point of fiction? On one hand, you have someone like Don DeLillo who suggests the problem isn't that the world is unreal, it's just that it's too fast. Events happen so quickly that meaning can't form around them. But then, Margaret Atwood comes in and says, wait a minute, that's precisely why literature matters more than ever. It acts as a kind of stabilizing record, a ledger of what actually happened and what was said when everything else is just noise. Okay, so what can a novel actually give us that this relentless, crazy, noisy world can't? Well, when you put them side by side, the contrast is pretty staggering. When you look at it this way, literature starts to feel like a form of quiet, ethical resistance. I mean, think about it. The world demands you pick a side, right now. A novel gives you space to pause your judgment. The news cycle shows you an impact and then moves on. But a novel forces you to sit with the aftermath, with the consequences. In our world, these qualities, they've actually become kind of radical. And this really gets to the heart of it. The goal was never to have this massive, world-changing influence. Like Olga Tokarczuk says, it accompanies you, it doesn't command you. The novelist David Mitchell builds on this perfectly. He argues a novel's true value is in its precision. It might only matter, truly and deeply, to one single person. And you know what? That's not a failure. That's the entire point. So, beyond what literature does, we really have to ask about its ethics. The conversation has shifted, and rightly so, to who gets to tell their story, and maybe more importantly, whose stories are still being silenced. And it's the great Toni Morrison who forces us to ask this really difficult question. She pushes us past just calling for more visibility and makes us look at the actual mechanics of silence itself. And in response to that question, you get this absolutely piercing answer from Arundhati Roy. Invisibility isn't just an oversight. It's not some accident. It is engineered. It's a function of power, specifically designed to protect systems and hierarchies by simply erasing the stories that might threaten them. And the challenges here are so incredibly complex. For example, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie warns that visibility can be a trap, where you're put on display as a symbol, but your actual voice is never really heard. Then you have Ocean Vuong, who talks about how some stories, especially stories of trauma, actually fracture language itself, so they resist being easily consumed by an audience. And Hanya Yanagihara points out that we, as readers, often reject stories of suffering if they don't give us some kind of comforting, neat redemption at the end. All right, and this, of course, brings us to the elephant in the room, the massive technological challenge from our screens, from the speed of culture, and, yeah, from the rise of artificial intelligence. William Gibson poses this question so bluntly, he's basically asking, has literature simply failed to justify its demand on our single most precious resource, our attention? But here is a fascinating counter-argument from George Saunders. He suggests the novel competes by basically refusing to be efficient. It creates what he calls moral friction. It's that slow, messy, complicated feeling you get when you realize something truly important is at stake. It's the very feeling that fast media and algorithms are actually designed to smooth over and eliminate. And this just brilliantly nails the human-shaped hole in all of this automated storytelling. The sci-fi author Ted Chiang says, look, an AI can generate a sequence of events. It can generate a plot. But a real story, at its very core, is an argument. It's a decision about what matters. And for that, you need a human being with something at stake. So when you put it all together, the value of a novel written by a person isn't just the words on the page. It's the intentionality, the fact that a person decided this story mattered. It's the vulnerability, someone risked everything to be misunderstood. And in a world of infinite, cheap, automated text, it's the sheer scarcity of it all, the fact that a human being chose to spend years of their one and only life on this. All of which leads us to the final, and maybe the most personal question of all. This is the question you ask after centuries where literature has, let's be honest, failed to stop wars, failed to stop cruelty, failed to stop us from forgetting. The writer W.G. Sebald asks this without any sugarcoating, stripping away any illusions that writing is some grand, heroic act. And the answers you get from other authors, well, they're as stark as they are profound. For someone like Cormac McCarthy, the answer is almost primal. Writing isn't about fixing the world. It's about the fundamental human need to name the world, to give it language, even if no one is listening. Then you have the Nobel laureate Annie Ernaux. For her, writing is an act of pure resistance. She says memory is a battleground. If you don't record it accurately, power will rewrite it for you. Her goal isn't to change the world, it's just to be accurate. And that, in itself, is a form of defiance. And for Orhan Pamuk, it's a choice between two different kinds of exile. The loneliness of being a writer is very real, but the alternative, the silence, not being able to speak your truth, that's a much deeper, much more profound exile from yourself and from the world. So, in the end, I think it comes down to this. Writers keep going, not because of some grand optimism, but out of a deep sense of fidelity. Fidelity to memory, fidelity to language, and maybe just fidelity to the quiet necessity of the act itself. Writing isn't an answer to the chaos, it's a way of staying conscious and present right in the middle of it. And maybe that's the ultimate justification. It brings us right back to Haruki Murakami. Literature doesn't shout, it doesn't trend, it just leaves a trace. In a world that is screaming at you to scroll past, to refresh, to look away, literature is the mark left by someone who refused. It's a space where we too can learn how to sit with reality a little more honestly.